This story is part of the Grandfather Gospel series by the Cardinal and Dove, gentle gospel reflections shared between a grandfather and the children who gather to listen. We're glad you're here. This is the story called Growing Quietly. Some of the most important growth happens long before anyone notices. Late winter lingered in the yard behind the house. The snow had pulled back from the edges of the ground, gathering beneath trees and along the fence. Where it had melted, the earth was dark and damp, soft enough to leave footprints. The air smelled of thawing soil and old wood waking up. Their grandfather, Elias Greyhawk, stood near the open shed with the boys, one hand resting against the doorframe as he watched them take it all in. Near the wall sat a pile of misshapen boards, some long, some short, some bowed with age. None of them matched. None of them was perfect. Elias pointed toward the pile. "Stack those boards by the wall," he said, "neatly." Tommy stepped closer at once. At 8, he was close in age to his cousin, little Eli, but more verbal, always thinking through how things worked. He picked up a longer board and frowned at its curve. Little Eli didn't hesitate. He grabbed a few pieces and tried stacking them. It wobbled and tipped. "That won't work," Tommy said, practical rather than unkind. "You need something bigger underneath." Little Eli swapped boards and tried again. This time it held. Slowly, the boys began sorting without being told. Longer boards first, heavier ones at the bottom. Tommy turned a warped board until it rested steadily. Little Eli stacked smaller pieces on top, adjusting them by feel. After a moment, Tommy looked back at Elias. "Why are we stacking these?" he asked. "They're crooked. We could buy new boards, perfect ones." Elias smiled, but waited before answering. "Because learning doesn't usually start with perfect pieces." Tommy nodded and went back to work. "You know," Elias said later, "Jesus grew up doing things like this." Both boys paused. "Like stacking boards?" little Eli asked. "Like working with his hands," Elias said. "He learned from his father Joseph." "He was a carpenter too?" Tommy asked. "Yes," Elias said. "Joseph taught him how to measure, how to notice what was straight and what wasn't, how to slow down before cutting, because once you cut, you can't put the wood back." Tommy nodded. That made sense. "So Jesus didn't just know everything already?" "No," Elias said. "He watched, he listened, he practiced." Little Eli held up a crooked board. "Even when it looks wrong?" "Especially then," Elias said. They worked quietly. Tommy stepped back to check the stack from another angle. Little Eli pressed a small piece into place and slowly pulled his hand away. It held. Elias took out his worn Bible and opened it carefully. "The Bible doesn't tell us many stories about Jesus as a boy," he said, "but it tells us what mattered most." He read softly. "Jesus grew in wisdom and stature, and in favor with God and man." "That means he got taller," little Eli said. "Yes," Elias said, "and wiser." "And people trusted him more," Tommy added. "Yes," Elias said, "because they could see who he was becoming." Tommy looked at the boards again. "So growing isn't just waiting?" "No," Elias said. "It's paying attention while you're being taught." Little Eli tried one more board. It slipped. He turned it and tried again. This time it settled. There, he said quietly. Tommy smiled. You watched first. The light shifted as the afternoon wore on. Water dripped steadily from the eaves. Jesus grew, not loudly, not all at once, and not in ways everyone noticed right away. He learned by watching, listening, and working beside someone who took the time to teach him. Elias rested his hand against the shed. Nothing here looks finished yet, he said, and that's all right. The boys went back to stacking. The snow would melt when it was ready. The boards would be used when the time came. And growth, real growth, would keep happening quietly. The scripture in this story comes from Luke chapter 2. It reminds us that Jesus grew through patience, learning, and faithful guidance. If this story was meaningful to you, we invite you to like and subscribe and continue walking with us through the Grandfather Gospel series. We're glad you're here. This has been Growing Quietly by the Cardinal and Dove.